Jane McCall and the Twilight Stacks. Chapter 19. The Twins. They found a table away from prying ears and sat down, Jane opposite the twins. It felt like an interrogation, and that feeling got worse when Cail pulled out her phone. "I'm going to record this," she stated. Jane didn't mind. This was actually a great opportunity to test her magic's effect on technology. Was it proximity or capture which fried the chips? Jane would bet on capture, but it would be good to have confirmation. Cail tapped her phone screen, and the app started recording. Jane tucked her hands under the table and muttered the word to loose her mark. The magic trickled in, and Jane relaxed. Now to spin a pretty little yarn of mostly truths and lies by omission. Cail started. She leaned in, clearly having watched a few too many crime dramas. "Tell us how you found the stacks." "Its full name is the Twilight Stacks," Jane informed them. Then she started to talk. She told them about her first encounter. She told them about the years she'd spent in it. She told them about forgetting everything except what she'd learned there for 6 months. She told them about the dreams, the headaches, and the memory flashbacks. She told them about the Stacks' current condition. She told them about Jess and showed them photos because any opportunity to show off her puppy's antics was a good opportunity. Cail actually cooed at one video of Jess kicking and growling in her sleep. Jane didn't tell them about her budding magic or the way detecting auras. She didn't tell them about the fact that the Stacks was alive and that it spoke to her. She didn't tell them about Caroline in the cave. She didn't tell them about her fear that another witch, who else had access to the Stacks, was responsible for its current condition. Guilt rose as she omitted more and more information, but she consoled herself under the pretense that Cail and Luke hadn't asked about her. Most of the stuff she was keeping out was about her own abilities and history. Jane finally ran out of things to say. She slumped back in her seat and turned her palms up, as drained as though she'd poured out spells instead of stories. "And that's all," she said. "Believe me or don't, that's your choice, but I can't let the Stacks die. I won't let it die." Cail's mouth was hanging open a bit, and her eyes were wide. Luke was leaning back in his chair, arms and ankles crossed, a pleased tilt to his head and one corner of his lips quirked up in a grin. He said, "You're a proper veteran of these places, aren't you?" "Just the Stacks. I've never heard of your courtyard, for example." He nodded once and nudged Cail, who came back to reality with a jump. She uttered a mild invective, then shoved away from the table. Jane was alarmed, but Cail just started pacing and muttering to herself. "She does this sometimes," Luke told Jane. "Just let her work it out of her system." It was fascinating to watch. While Luke's earlier gestures took up a lot of space and involved sharp lines of motion, Cail's hands stayed close to her chest. They fluttered. Her words blended into each other, and Jane couldn't understand any of the spiel. It was almost musical. The tirade wound down fairly quickly, leaving Cail swaying side to side and tapping her fingers against her arm in a rapid nonsense pattern. "You don't make sense," she informed Jane. "Your amnesia has to be more extensive than mine, but you found the Stacks anyway. You asked me about tattoos of all things when we met, and now you're acting like you can do something about a pocket dimension's deterioration. What are you hiding?" Oof. Cail was more perceptive than Jane had given her credit for. She winced and wished she could retract her mark without needing to invoke a spell. "That's not the deal. I told you about the Stacks. Stop pushing." "No." She circled around the table and pushed herself into Jane's space. Jane leaned back until 2 of her chair's legs left to the floor. It wasn't far back enough for her taste, but any farther and she'd fall. Cail didn't care. She dropped a hand on the table and hissed, "Something is going on with you. Spill it." Jane flinched back, and her chair's equilibrium destabilized. She yelped and reached forward to catch herself, heedless of the fact that the senses swap that would result from touching Cail would be impossible to explain. Luckily for her, hands grabbed her upper arms and kept her from falling. She looked over her shoulder and saw Luke glowering at his sister. "Lay off, Cail," Luke ordered. "We met her 20 minutes ago. She doesn't have to tell us her tragic backstory if she doesn't want to." He looked down at Jane and gave her a sheepish grin as he pushed her back to stability. Cail backed off as Jane's feet hit the floor. Nonetheless, she growled. "Easy for you to say. Remember what happened with the last person we tried to bring in? We can't just introduce her to the courtyard. What if she tries to damage it like he did?" "This is a different situation, and you know it. She's trying to save her own place. She won't hurt ours," Luke pointed out. Jane had enough. "She is right here and can speak for herself, and I promise I won't do anything to your courtyard." The suspicious glare Cail leveled at her could have extinguished a house fire. Or set one. He said the same thing. He who? Jane stood up, thoroughly sick of being given the third degree and done with not having context for the situation she was getting thrown into. Look, you were the one who proposed our deal, not me. If you're getting cold feet now, just say so and I'll find some other way to save the stacks. Don't string me along if you have no intention to follow through. She turned to leave, hands shaking from how tightly they were balled into fists. This was stupid, a waste of time. To think she'd actually believed these twins might be helpful. Jane, wait! Luke's hand landed on her shoulder, and she whirled around to slap it off. No, you and Cail have made your position clear. She jabbed a finger into his sternum. Part of her recognized that he wasn't to blame, but she was so angry. We're not friends. I get it. But you don't get to project your bad past experiences onto me because I figured things out faster than you did. He took a step back, a pained expression on his face. Jane winced and felt bad instantly. Sorry, that was out of line. He shook his head. His face softened, though hurt still shone in his eyes. Jane's bad feeling intensified until it hit accidentally kicked Jess levels. No, it's okay, Luke said. Come on, let's take this outside. She was so off kilter that she didn't protest when he took her by the elbow and guided her out the door. Cail followed close behind them, but peeled off as they passed the circulation desk. Jane looked back, but Luke ushered her on before she could see what Cail was doing. Luke led Jane out the door and around the corner before leaning against the library wall. The sun was warm and the sky was clear. A brisk breeze that smelled faintly of flowers kissed Jane's face, and she took a deep, calming breath. Better? Luke asked. He was watching her with an inscrutable expression, but Jane didn't feel threatened. Maybe because he was a little smaller than her, maybe because he'd been nothing but nice. Either way, she nodded. Cail came around the corner, phone and a few books in hand. She came to a dead halt upon seeing Jane. They stared each other down. Jane was unwilling to lose a battle of wills with the smaller girl, and Cail wasn't about to back down in the face of a stranger. Luke watched them the way an owner watched a pair of freshly introduced cats, waiting for the fur to fly. A frisson of tension curled around the trio. Jane finally tested the waters. It wasn't cool of me to snap at you. Not exactly an apology, but an acknowledgement. Cail's shoulders dropped a fraction. It would be a real shock if you did attack the courtyard. And there they had it, an uneasy truce. Jane blew out a breath. Will you take me to the courtyard tomorrow? Cail's eyes slid shut. With deep reluctance, she said, Yes, here's what you need to do. Queries, kudos, or concerns? Like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for listening.